This is C.L.S. All-in-One, and today I'm going to be installing some 3-inch rear lift blocks on a 1999 Chevy Silverado 1500. The lift blocks I'm installing are made by Ride Efffex. These are 3-inch aluminum blocks that are made to go underneath a leaf spring, and they come supplied with 2-degree shims. And I'm also going to be installing larger U-bolts to make up the difference for the larger block. And on the back you'll find instructions to figure out what block you should use for your vehicle. You'll need to measure your leaf springs and your U-bolts to find out which blocks are needed. Most of your larger lift blocks come supplied with shims. My vehicle comes stock with 2-inch lift blocks, so I'm just going to be replacing those blocks with the 3-inch block. So my actual lift is only going to be 1 inch in the rear. So because I'm only lifting an inch, I'm not going to be using these shims. But in situations where you do lift the vehicle a full 3 inches, the higher the leaf spring is lifted from the axle, the greater the angle becomes. So a shim may be necessary. Also keep in mind, if you lift your vehicle any more than an inch, you're probably going to have to replace your shocks. Otherwise they may get damaged from overextending. So because the lift is only going to be 1 inch, I need to get some U-bolts that look the same as these, except they're going to be 1 inch longer. So to install these, I'm going to start with just jacking up the rear of the vehicle. I'm going to jack up from the rear differential here and get it to a pretty good height. After I get it to the height I want, I'm going to go ahead and put some jack stands underneath the frame right here. And I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. Now I'm going to go ahead and lower the back of the vehicle to where the wheels are touching the ground. After lowering the vehicle, go ahead and shake the vehicle side to side by pushing on the side of it to make sure your jack stands are nice and secure. If there's any movement, you may have to reposition your jack stands. Now it's time to start taking the U-bolts off, which are located right here. And to make things easier for you, go ahead and spray the nuts that secure the U-bolts thoroughly with some WD-40 before taking them off. So there should be 4 different nuts you're going to have to remove. And also I should mention, you should only do one side at a time, that way the axle is never completely disconnected. Once all the nuts are removed, you can remove the bottom plate. Then go ahead and remove the U-bolts. Now I'm going to place a bottle jack underneath the leaf spring just in front of the axle and start lifting it from the axle. You'll want to continue to jack up the leaf springs until you have enough clearance for your new blocks. So I should have enough clearance now. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. And here's a look at it. I've got it lifted to where I got about 1.5 inch gap, and all I needed was 1 inch, so I got plenty of clearance now. And to remove the old block, it might be rusted and stuck in place, so you might have to hit it a couple times with a chisel and a hammer. And here's a look at the stock block that was already on my vehicle. Note that it has a hole in the top and a pin on the bottom, and that's what helps lock it in place. And I'll go ahead and measure it here to show you the thickness. It measures right at 2 inches. And here's a look at the 3-inch block that's going to go in place of it. It also has a hole on the top and a pin on the bottom, so it'll line up right on that leaf spring and axle, just like the stock block did. And take note, there's not much angle between the block and the spring, so no shim is necessary for my vehicle. Once the block's in position, I'm going to go ahead and lower the leaf spring onto the block. Also, you want to make sure that those holes and pins line up correctly. You might have to use a hammer to tap it back and forth to make it sit just right. Now it's time to go ahead and attach the U-bolts. These U-bolts are about 1 inch longer than the stock ones to make up the difference of the 3-inch block. You want to make sure when you tighten the bottom plate to just hand tighten everything first. And you want to make sure everything's tightened nice and even. You want the same amount of threads exposed on each bolt. Also, a lock washer should be included with each nut, and that'll help ensure that these nuts don't come loose. And for these U-bolts on my vehicle, my torque specs call for about 70 foot-pounds of torque, so I'm going to tighten each nut to about 70 pounds. And it certainly wouldn't hurt after a couple days of driving to go ahead and recheck the nuts and make sure they're still at 70 pounds of torque. Okay, now I'm all done on this side. It's complete. Now it's time to do the same exact thing on the other side. So if you got leaf springs on a vehicle, this is a pretty inexpensive and easy way to lift it. Well, thanks for watching. This is C.L.S. All-in-One. If you want to hear more from me, please like and subscribe. And if you want to see more of my videos, just click any of these links.